Sox in the basement.
So many more positives and negatives coming out of spring training right now for the White Sox. The MLB Pipeline top 30 list for each team debuted over the last couple of days. We have the White Sox top 30, and it poses a very interesting question and gives you a little bit of excitement over the next couple of years. We're going to get into that. And there's an interesting trade possibility that I've seen some people already write about, that I had people texting me about this week, that the White Sox may have in front of them. And I kind of want to go into that as well. This episode of Sox in the Basement, always brought to you, like every episode of Sox in the Basement, by Cork and Carry at the Park at 33rd and Princeton in the shadow of the ballpark. They got great food there, award-winning burgers, ballpark favorites, amazing service. This is where you want to be pregame, postgame, in-game is Cork and Carry at the Park. And the big day coming up here next Sunday is the Southside Irish Parade. And the original location over on 106th and Western is the best. It's like one of my favorite places to go hang out. So I'm going to be there. I don't know if we'll bump into each other. We might. Look for me in the crowd. But if you're going to celebrate Southside Irish Parade Day, the place to be is Cork and Carry on Western Avenue along the route. You get to see everything, and it's really the biggest party that's along Western Avenue. So check it all out, everything going on at corkandcarry.com. All right, the first thing I want to get into is just a really interesting story that piqued my interest this week personally, because I play Dynasty Fantasy Baseball, and I have this guy that's been on my team the last couple of years that had a great season a few years ago, was instrumental in how well my team played, and was kind of a surprise. And then last year burned me when he was suspended for 80 games for PED usage by MLB. And now, just about a week ago, we have to figure out what guys we're going to keep that are over 30 years old in this Dynasty League, and you can only keep so many of them. And I decide Jurickson Profar burned me once. I will not let him burn me again. And I release him when I'm declaring my keepers and decide I don't have room for him on my team. And then he gets 162 games. And the Atlanta Braves, who signed this guy to basically be a designated hitter, have been completely burned by Jurickson Profar. But what it does is it opens up a possibility for the White Sox. I know I'm not the first person to say this, trust me, but it was something that was discussed in the fantasy league the day that it happened. It's been discussed amongst me and my friends. I just haven't had a chance to talk about it myself. So first, let's talk about Profar. I know he's not a White Sox player, but I want you to gain a little bit of perspective here on a guy who was suspended for performance-enhancing drugs. That's a PED suspension. And this is his second one in 2 years. And the Braves have got to be so frustrated because they give him a big contract coming off of his year in 2024 where he's an all-star for the Padres. And that's his best season on his baseball card. But it's very telling. He debuts in Major League Baseball in 2012 at 19 years old for the Rangers. He does not play due to injury in 2014, but he's in the majors from 2012 all the way through now. And year by year, we're talking about a guy with an OPS, that's your slugging and your on-base percentage combined, of 647, below average, 644, 660, 501. Finally has a positive one above average, 793 when he's 25 years old. Gets dealt to Oakland, or I think he signs with Oakland. I can't remember how this goes, but he goes to Oakland for a year. I think that's a deal where he gets dealt to them. 711 OPS. That's a little bit below average for that year. Now he's on the Padres at 27 years old. He produces a 771 OPS, a 649, a 723. Spends part of the year with the Padres, giving them a 776 OPS, gets traded to Colorado. 680 OPS there. The combined OPS for that season, 689. It's well below average. A lot of them in the 600s. That is not an everyday starter. Jurickson Profar, at 30 years old, puts up a 776 OPS in limited time. Year 30. Only plays 14 games for the Padres. After you hear all of that and the below average hitting from a career that spans from he's 19 years old through 30 years of age, ask yourself, why at 31, he suddenly has his greatest season ever. An astounding season where for the first time in his career, he has an OPS over 800 with an 839 OPS. He hits the most home runs he's ever hit at 24 home runs. He hits 280. That's his highest average that he has over the entire career, with the exception of the one the year before where he hits 295. But again, it was only 14 games. No. No, we're talking about a guy, even if I throw that 280 average in, his career average is only 245. That's what he hit last year. After taking the suspension, 80 games, he goes back to what his career average is. His OPS back under 800. And then he gets suspended again. Anybody ever ask you, do you think that these PEDs improve performance? Yes, they do. Because Jurickson Profar got himself a big deal with Atlanta. And if you're the Braves, you're consulting attorneys on make sure that you know, I think he's got another year in there. They don't have to pay him for this year, but I would never want him around my club again. He missed the first half and lost playoff eligibility for them last year in his first year of his contract. His free agent contract, his biggest signing ever. And then he misses all of this year, leaves the Netherlands national team in the WBC like 10 minutes before game time. That's when he finds out, so he can't play in the WBC, the World Baseball Classic either, just leaves. I would never want this guy around my team, but it opens up an interesting possibility. The Braves are in desperation mode. Their designated hitter is gone. Why would this impact the White Sox? It impacts the White Sox because they have an awful lot of infielders. And one of them hit 22 home runs last year, is young, is controllable, isn't going to cost the Braves basically anything. And he doesn't play a defensive position well. And when you see all the other infielders out in spring training right now playing so well, you have to ask, what is Lenyn Sosa's role and what is it long term with all the prospects that are coming? Now, look, his OPS is not the same as Profar. You're not getting the same player. But if you're the Braves and you're desperate, you're halfway through spring training, and you're looking for a bat. And think about the money you're saving on Profar's contract. You can go out now and sign yourself a big-time starting pitcher. Remember when I was saying I wanted Littell? He's still out there at 30 years old. Imagine using the money from Profar if you're the Braves to go get like an expensive piece still sitting out there in free agency. And then just using some prospects, something the White Sox might need that you have available to go get a guy to at least get in your lineup because you're looking for a bat to replace a guy you were counting on for 162. Because if I look at Lenyn Sosa right now, just as last year, he had 264 with a 727 OPS, just a little bit above average. He had 22 home runs. He's only 25 years old. That's his best season so far. If the Braves think he might actually get better, and he doesn't have to concentrate on defense, and he just sits in their lineup, I'm not saying he becomes automatically the 4 hitter, but you're just looking for a bat. And he's an inexpensive bat. And the Sox would be motivated to kind of clear out one of the many trying to compete for those infield jobs. And remember, there's a history of Getz dealing with the Braves front office already in his short tenure as general manager of the White Sox. It's possible. Now, I don't know if the White Sox want to do it, because think about it, the White Sox may really like the fact that they developed and have a young, mid-20s hitter that could produce over 20 home runs and may actually improve. They have to figure out where he's going to play, right? Like, is he subbing 4 days a week? Are they moving him around? He subs at third, subs at second, subs at first. I don't think they dare put him at short, but maybe they move Mydroth over to short or somebody else. Like, is he subbed in 4 days a week? Do they get creative and make him a DH on the 5th day? And he's really getting 5 out of the 6 games that you're playing every week because he's subbing constantly? Is that what the plan is? I don't know. You're hurting yourself defensively putting him in there in most cases, in most of the positions that he's going to play at. I find it really funny, depending on what depth chart you look at. Sometimes he's listed as a first baseman. Sometimes he's listed as a second baseman. You can kind of move him around. You can kind of put him in positions you like and then move some of the other infielders around. You can get creative with the whole thing. I don't know how they're going to use him. But the Sox have a lot of infielders, and they got a lot of infielders coming. And I don't know what you do with him long term. So I'd be curious. I'm curious if there's been a phone call. I'm curious if Chris Getz hasn't mentioned to his counterpart in Atlanta, hey, by the way, we really like this guy and this guy on in your system. And, we may be able to part with Lenny Sosa. It's something to watch for. It's something I'm really interested in seeing. Like, these are the things that we were talking about on the last couple of shows. Spring training is kind of a living, breathing animal, and players are going to get hurt. And opportunities are going to open up because teams are going to be trying to replace those players if it's a long-term thing. And there's also some free agents that are banking on that with rotations that still haven't signed yet, which is shocking to me. I would still like the White Sox to go get Littell. I think they dropped the ball on that one. I think he could have been in your rotation for 3-4 years. Then again, you heard James Fox just recently on this show from Future Sox telling you, I don't know if anybody on that rotation, when it breaks camp, is in that rotation at the end of the year, because it's possible that a guy like Shane Smith could be really, really good, very, very controllable, and you have so many arms coming up that you may get a crush there as well in your rotation. You're going to get a lot of debuts by the end of the year. But again, Sosa being available, Profar going down, it's not the same player. But man, somebody should call down to the Braves and just be like, hey guys, you're looking for a guy who can hit over 20 home runs to replace the guy that you lost that hit 24 home runs the year before you signed him? That's his ceiling. Profar's ceiling was 24 in a year on his baseball card. And you got a guy that hit 22 last year. It's at least worth having the conversation. Sox in the Basement listeners, for exterior windows, doors, patio doors, and storm doors, look no further than Window and Door Superstore of Oak Forest. No high-pressure sales, not in your kitchen. They are not in your living room. They're not tracking mud inside the home. You go see them in the showroom. Now, you may be like, why do I got to go see them? Because they got everything there. They got all the windows and the doors in full color. It's not a little example window. You know, when these sales guys show up when you're buying windows, they bring in something that's, I don't know, the size of from your waist to your shoulders. It's not a full window. And it's very small. It's normally been beat up. It's been in the back of their car for years. They show off some of the doohickeys on it, but half the time it's not working. I once worked for a window store for about 6 months. I know what this is like. Not these guys. If I had to work for Window and Door Superstore, I've been with them forever because they're great people. Instead, you go into the showroom, you talk to an owner. On site, they have installed, there's an owner there, right? You get to see everything in full color. Everything works. You get to ask your questions. No pictures in a book. You're spending a lot of money. You want to spend a lot of money because somebody showed you a picture in a catalog? You want to see the thing in person. They've been doing it this way for 40 years in Oak Forest since 1985 with all major brands custom made and no stock items for a perfect fit. Window and Door Superstore of Oak Forest is a half block east of 159th and Ridgeland at 6280 159th Street. See more at windowdooroakforest.com. I want to say thank you very much to everybody who has sent well wishes. They continue to pour in for my co-host Ed Siebert, still in the hospital, out of the ICU, recovering. It's going to be a long road. I don't know when he'll be back on the show again. I think we're at least looking at a minimum of 2 weeks, possibly 3, before we can realistically expect him. And that may be from like a rehab facility where he's bored and he joins us as he's getting his body put back together. But the long-term prognosis is he will recover and he'll be back good as new or as good as Ed was, which is exciting news. And again, thank you very much for all those emails and messages. Let's get to a couple other messages because one of them is going to spark the next conversation. First, we're going to start off with DJ. DJ wrote, I have to commend you on your interview with the University of Chicago Data Analysis Group. If I have heard one White Sox player say it, I've heard 10 of them say they worked on and improved their bat speed. This is the biometric study that was done. We had the guys behind the study contracted by the White Sox who told me after the interview, there's another one they're starting to do now as well for the team. So the team liked the results. They're going to keep working with this group is what I've been told. And they talked about bat speed. And they talked about how you take a hitter and how you can improve the results going along with the things that they're discovering in this biometric study. This is not exclusive to the White Sox. Lots of teams do it. Sox have been behind the curve, but then again, Chris Getz gets in there and he goes, okay, if the old man isn't going to spend money, I'm going to improve this facility. I'm going to bring in these guys from outside the organization. I'm going to change the way we do things. This is one of those big changes. Continuing on what DJ wrote here. I haven't compared years, but it seems the team's spring training offense is much better and more consistent than in previous springs. I don't think I need to compare years. You can see it. Eyeball test. Everybody's hitting out there right now. If this continues into the regular season and the Sox have found a competitive advantage, the miser, that must be Jerry Reinsdorf, needs to open up the checkbook for this study and others like it. He needs to open up the checkbook for players too. And let's be honest. It's still under $100 million, I believe, this payroll. It's pitiful. And I know everybody always goes, well, you're going to block somebody. No. Competition makes guys play harder. Look at the competition in your rotation. Look at the competition in your bullpen. Look at the competition in the infield. And look at how they're playing. Young, hungry guys who have been spending their entire lives trying to make it onto a Major League Baseball roster are motivated by competition. The last rebuild, the last regime, they were telling guys that were in single A, one day you're going to be the starter on this team. There was no competition. And look where that got him. Dan wrote in, hi, Chris, want to thank you for doing your podcast. I live in St. Louis. At least people here hate the Cubs. And I do not have many people here that care or talk White Sox. A big story in spring training has been Antonacci and the debate on if he will end up taking over from Meidroth this year at second. Is there not just as big, if not bigger, a chance that Vargas would be the odd man out if he does not hit, seeing as he has had far more opportunities in the majors and has not consistently proven to be a starter? Seeing that the front office is so high on Meidroth, I see him being given his full year to figure things out and hopefully being a good leadoff man. Thinking of Ed and his family, aloha, and bleep Jerry, Dan Moss. Dan, first of all, I love the tag at the end of it. I love the sign off. I love when people use that. It's the best. Secondly, I don't know if the Sox are as high on Meidroth as some of us are, right? Like when you think of that trade, Brady Montgomery is the true star if he develops into the player they believe him to be, and I think he will. Kyle Teal was actually the number 2 best guy in that group. A lot of people said when you're thinking of ceilings, Montgomery's the best player that they got in that deal. Teal is the second best player. Meidroth is the third. And they didn't have room for him in Boston, but he had some talent. And what I remember after that trade was he could turn into a viable Major League Baseball player, but he's not a star. And I don't know if Antonacci's a star either. I think some of your stars are still sitting down in the minor leagues. They're coming. They're not here yet. But I don't know if long-term the belief is that Meidroth is your second baseman for the next 5 to 10 years. I don't think that that's what the organization feels. He's going to get an opportunity. But I think that this is where the competition thing comes from. I don't care which one of them ends up at second base between Antonacci and Meidroth. I just want the best one. I just want the guy that's going to win me the most amount of games. I want the guy that fires his teammates up. I want the guy that's going to get the big hit. I am not married to either one of these players. One is the shiny new toy that everybody's excited about right now in spring, and the other guy is the guy that we were all excited about when he got here to the majors and seems to have been dealing with some injuries that may have affected his hitting in the back half of the year. I love the idea there's competition, though. Vargas has been fairly good in spring training to this point, but I get your point. I feel the same way. I think Vargas and Meidroth are actually being pushed by Antonacci. And I think that if one of them fails, and both of them may end up starting right where you're expecting them to start. Meidroth is the starting second baseman, and Vargas at third. But the first one to stumble, I think Sam Antonacci comes up and takes that job. Because the White Sox are not married to the current infield. Let's just talk about this infield for a moment. And let's compare it to MLB Pipeline's top 30 list of prospects on the Chicago White Sox. And we'll even throw in some of the things we've learned from some of the prospect heads that have been on this show over the last couple of months. And I'm just going to look on this list. Well, real quick, Braden Montgomery is your number 1. Noah Schultz is your number 2. Hagen Smith is at 4. Tanner McDougal, biggest jump on their list, moves up to 6. And Schultz and Smith and McDougal, these are 3 guys that could be high-end starters in your rotation. And by the way, Drew Thorpe throwing on Thursday saying he's only 1 to 2 weeks behind where they expected him to be. He's coming back too. And there's more names. The rotation's going to be crazy. There's so many. Not everybody works out, but they're throwing enough darts at the dartboard that they should be able to find a good few front-end starters out of the group that they have right now, and that's exciting because your owner's never going to spend the premium price for starting pitching. But let's look at the infielders on this list. Caleb Bonnemer, shortstop, third base, and I think he's going to be a third baseman, if not moving eventually to first base. Remember, Murakami's only there for 2 years right now. Unless he resigns, it's only a 2-year deal. And I don't know what your long-term solution is there. Caleb Bonnemer is their third best prospect on the MLB Pipeline top 30 list for the White Sox. Billy Carlson is 5th. And both those players are in the MLB top 100, which tells you a lot about the talent in that system right now. They've got a lot of guys in the top 100 list as well of all of Major League Baseball. Then you also have the players you already have up there. You have Colson Montgomery, Chase Meidroth, Sam Antonacci. Antonacci's on this list, by the way. He's number 9 on the White Sox prospect list. Again, you have Vargas. He's out there. He's got the pedigree. He had his best season ever on his baseball card. If he improves on that season, he can hold that job and hold off the challenges coming from all these other players. And then you have the unofficial big-time prospect coming in the draft, Rock Chalowski. Now, I have spoken with those that watch these prospects. I mean, heck, I'll just go off of what James Fox of Future Sox told me, because we had a big conversation about it, me and him on the phone. Rock Chalowski is the truth. Guys like Rock Chalowski don't go to college. They just get drafted right away as a prep. He's in college and he's polished. This is a guy they're going to draft this year in the draft with the number 1 overall draft choice. And he's going to be here halfway through next year. That's a possibility. And when he gets here, he's probably going to claim shortstop. It's going to create quite the logjam. In fact, when you look at these guys, think of your base infield right now. Base infield, you got Murakami standing over at first base. You got Vargas over at third. You got Meidroth, let's say, at second base. You got Colson Montgomery at short. You got Antonacci challenging right now to be on this team. You have the very surprising Tanner Murray. Remember, he came over with Luis Angel Acuna. We all kind of forgot about him. He's having a nice spring right now. He's shown some pop. He's got 2 home runs, 6 RBIs. He's 4 for 17 over 7 games. You know, you got Lenny Sosa. We haven't moved him yet. These are all the names right now. And then you've got these guys that are down there that are prospects that are coming here. And then you got Chalowski. So yeah, it's going to be a bloodletting. You only have 4 infield positions. Not everybody can play first. Not everybody can play third. Not everybody can play short. The great thing that the White Sox have going for them is that they have done in their drafting and their player acquisition recently the exact thing that I've yelled about as a need and a focus for probably the entire 8 years this show has been around, especially through the last regime. Draft shortstops. Shortstops are the best player on the team. Think about Little League. The best player on your team was the shortstop. And then the best player on the high school team is the shortstop. And then the best player on the college team is the shortstop. Because, and what happens if you get 2 guys or 3 guys that join? Let's say you get 3 shortstops come to a college team. And one guy's better than the other 2. One of them becomes a third baseman, the other one becomes a center fielder. They can go anywhere. They're the best athletes on the field. It's been like that since they picked up a ball and started playing. I coached girls softball. My daughter was on all these teams as she was younger. She won a state championship. She's got a ring at 11 years old for Evergreen Park Girls Softball League. Batting in the middle of the order. She's got her name up on a plaque at the local park here, which I think is pretty cool. I hope they keep that up forever so she can show it to her kids one day when she's older. Be like, see, mom's on the plaque. That'd be awesome. But the best player on my team was always the shortstop. When I was coaching, I always said, oh, that one there, that's the best. My daughter was not as athletically gifted as the girl that I had at short. Because the best player goes there. And the White Sox are just drafting shortstops. And they've got three of them. And then if you made the argument that maybe Antonacci could, in a bind, do it, 4. But they have 3 shortstops right now in their top 10. Billy Carlson, Caleb Bonham, and, well, I've already put Rock Chalowski in there. That's the third one. That's my brain just kind of putting him in there already. They're going to draft him number 1 overall. If you've been lucky enough to watch highlights of him so far in his last season of college baseball, that guy's incredible. I mean, comparisons I've heard is this is Alex Bregman if he could play short. And that's what the White Sox are going to go out and select. I'd be shocked if they didn't. So now think about the timeline of the guys coming to take jobs. Antonacci is here now, right? He's here trying to get a job now. Then you got Rock Chalowski, who could be here as early as midway through next year. Then, according to MLB Pipeline, in 2028, Caleb Bonham should be ready. Then, according to MLB Pipeline, Billy Carlson in 2029. Where's everybody going to go? Now, this is a great problem to have. And think about it. It's twofold. One, the best players are going to come up and take the jobs of the other guys. It's going to be so interesting to watch. 2, it's going to motivate the guys that are up there to put all the time they possibly can into improving their craft, or otherwise they're going to lose their job on a Major League Baseball team. And 3, if you get to a point where you have your infield, and let's say Billy Carlson is still sitting down there and maturing and continuing to be a high-end prospect on the MLB Top 100 list, wow, you are going to trade him for a frontline ace-type pitcher at a trade deadline when you're ready to make your run through the postseason because you're going to have that chip in a couple of years. That's the beauty of drafting shortstops. That's the beauty of acquiring an awful lot of talent. People sit around and they worry about, well, where are we going to put this guy? Where are we going to put that guy? I don't care. Best guy wins. Guy behind him gets traded or is like a super utility guy. You want the wealth of riches. That was the problem with the last group in the early part of this decade. The last group, there was no competition behind them. Yoan Moncada came up, and there was nobody saying, yeah, but what about when so-and-so gets here and tries to take Moncada's job? None of that existed. None of that existed. It exists now. This is how you build a team. This is how you build a team long-term. And I absolutely love the philosophy behind it. It is going to be so interesting. You want my pick? My pick is I think that they are going to go out there with basically the lineup that you have on paper right now. I think Antonacci does not join the team coming out of spring no matter how well he plays. Because I think they're going to give the guy, I think they've already kind of set their lineup. And I think it's going to be, okay, here's our starting infield. We got Murakami. We've got Chase Mydroth. We've got Colson Montgomery. We've got Miguel Vargas. We got Lenny Sosa as a sub. And unless they move him, I think Antonacci is not coming up. If they move him, now Antonacci comes up. Now you see open competition after spring training of him trying to get into the lineup and Mydroth and Vargas try to hold on to their jobs. And all that does is create more and more positivity for the team. Because guys are at a high level, they're looking over their shoulder, and they're trying their best to keep their job. I love it. That music music means the Sox nerd Dave Marin is on the line with his trivia nuggets and tidbits and ready to give them all to you just like he gives them to the ballpark over at the Rate each and every White Sox home game, and he's brought to you by the Village of Lamont. Want to experience a downtown with real history, great eats and drinks, and green spaces filled with adventure? Visit the Village of Lamont. Shop, dine, drink, explore, see in advance all of the restaurants and the events and the things you can do there, because I just travel around Lamont tasting at all the rest. I mean, it's insane right now. I have the best job in the world. I'm the host of all these shows, including Lamont Unlocked. View Lamont Unlocked at lamontdowntown.com. Nerd, what do you got for me?
Chris, how about a few more nuggets on some who figure to be key players for the 2026 White Sox? For good measure, again, I added opening day morsels because, let's face it, that day can't come soon enough. Shane Smith is coming off an all-star season. Should he do that again, Smith will be the first Sox righty starter to make consecutive all-star teams since Esteban Loaiza in 2003 and 2004. Other righty starters to rep the Sox in back-to-back Midsummer Classics are Jack McDowell and Early Wynn. Should Smith start on opening day, he will be the third Sox pitcher named Smith to do so and the first since Eddie in 1940. Moving on to Edgar Carroll. The switch-hitting catcher made at least one start in every spot in the batting order last season. Carroll's numbers in the third spot are extremely promising. The Cuban slashed .329, .388, and .438 in his 18 starts in the three-hole last season. What's even more promising is that the Sox went 18-10 when Carroll started in that slot. That is the best record any Sox player had at any position in the order last season, ahead of Colson Montgomery's 7-4 in the 7th spot, Curtis Mead's 6-4 at number 6, and Lenyn Sosa's 7-6 in the 8th spot. Carroll has yet to hit third in the Cactus League. So far, he's hit fourth 3 times, second 2 times, and sixth once. As for opening day, Carroll could be the first second-year player to hit third in a Sox season starter since Kerry Self did it in 1932. In that opener, Self became the first and to date only player in team history to log a 3-double game in a curtain raiser. How about a few on Miguel Vargas? Like Carroll, he made starts at every spot in the order. He one-upped his teammate, though, by making at least 2 starts in each slot, while that number was 1 for Carroll. Vargas made a personal best 45 starts at cleanup, but unlike Carroll, there was no spot in which he started where the Sox had a winning record. The closest was 8th. The Sox split his 2 starts there. The fact that the Sox are playing the Brewers on opening day is a great thing for Vargas. He hit .500, that's 5 for 10, against the NL Central champs last season, which is tied for the 4th best season output in franchise history. You know who has my permission to swing at the first pitch? Brooks Baldwin, that's who. The switch hitter compiled a 1,069 OPS with 3 homers when swinging at the first offering last season. Speaking of the first pitch, since 1985, no White Sox player has opened the season with a first pitch hit. Some random gems? I used to call it, quote, fishing from my stream of consciousness during my days as a columnist for what once was Kenosha's most interesting daily newspaper, also known as the Kenosha News. 44-year-old Alexei Ramirez is playing for Team Cuba in the World Baseball Classic. A member of the Sox from 2008 to 2015, Ramirez was 0 for 3 with 2 strikeouts, batting 7th and playing left in Cuba's 19-2 loss to the Reds on Wednesday. By the way, the oldest player to start in left for the Sox was also a Cuban. On June 10th and 11th, 1964, Minnie Minoso became the first and only 40-year-old to start in left field for the Sox. The next oldest? How about 39-year-old Carlton Fisk in 1987? Jeff the Giant, also known as @SoxOfWhite, a great follow on Twitter or X, was seeking White Sox book recommendations. I offered 2, Who's on Third and Stealing First in a Two-Team Town, both by Rich Lindbergh. Who's on Third is a comprehensive narrative on Sox history, and you'll learn a lot. Stealing First tells the fascinating story of all that went into the construction of the Sox current home. Before I get to my zinger, let me remind you that gems like these and others are available on my blog, which you can access at soxinthebasement.com, and I'm also posting daily on X and Threads. My zinger? Chris, you mentioned the one-game Sox-Cubs exhibition games back in the day on the last Sox in the Basement pod. I absolutely love those, especially since the Sox dominated them up until interleague play rendered them obsolete. Aside from the MJ game at Wrigley Field in 1994, The most memorable all-city clash came in 1964 with the Boys Benefit game, when the Sox overpowered the Cubs 11-1 before an overflow crowd of 52,712 at Comiskey Park. That's overflow as in an estimated 3,000 spectators who were allowed to watch from the roped-off sections in the outfield. Fans were standing 20 deep from the right field line to the bullpen canvas and center. This was the first time since the 1920s fans were allowed to do this, and balls hit into this area were declared ground rule doubles. In the next day's Tribune, there was a front page caption that read, "Although White Sox fans may suggest otherwise, the man in the center is not wearing a Cub uniform." The man in the center was Andy the Clown. That rivalry runs deep. That's it, Chris. Probably more than you wanted to know about the Smiths, first pitch swingers, and elderly outfielders.
Sox in the basement. Sox in the basement. Sox in the basement.
Sox in the Basement. Heard everywhere podcasts can be found, and always on soxinthebasement.com.